My name's Dan Ham, the executive producer on Far Cry and the CDE on Far Cry 5.
So let's start by talking about your goals heading into this new game.
I think that for us, what we wanted to be able to do is do something that people weren't expecting, right? I think that we'd been sitting around talking about the game and talking about different ideas, and every single time we do this, we want to challenge ourselves to build something that's completely unexpected. And I don't think anybody was expecting Montana. I don't think anybody was expecting the States. I don't think anybody was expecting the creative that we're talking about. And I think that's where we want to be.
Where did the idea come from to focus on the U.S.?
I think the idea has been around for a while for us. Like even as far back as Far Cry 3, when we were finishing Far Cry 3, there was an idea. It wasn't perfectly formed about going to the U.S. and starting to ask ourselves, how would we do it? How would it make sense? And then I think 2.5, 3 years ago, we started to have really serious discussions about it. Like, how would it work? What's the logistics of taking it to America? How would we build the world? How would the characters in the world respond? What's the creative that makes it so that you can go into that setting and you can see a world pushback in the States? It was super interesting as a process.
You've been literally all over the world with this franchise. How distant did it feel going to Montana, even though you were in the United States with this type of backdrop?
Well, it's a good question. I think, Far Cry is about going to a frontier. And I think a lot of times people are expecting that to be exotic and on the other side of the globe. But this time what we wanted to be able to do was make it and say the idea that maybe it's the thing in your own backyard, it's still a frontier, but maybe it's the thing in your own backyard that's super interesting, that you should try and actually experience. And Montana gave us that through the roof.
This also, given the development time of the game, happened long before the political change that happened. What are your thoughts about how that played into everything being ahead of the curve in a way with this game?
Yeah, it's interesting. We get that question a lot, and I honestly believe it's chicken or the egg. It's not that this game is specifically touting an agenda or an opinion on politics. We're going to have people in the world who have their own opinions, and you're going to see all kinds of different sides and different opinions in the world. But what's really interesting is that the creative for this game is the idea that we have a character in our game who believes that we're on the edge of something. And for the first time in a long time, when I look at what's going on in the world, it matches. And so when we think about our father and we think about the idea that he has this feeling like we're on the edge, that a calamity could occur, and I kind of wake up in the morning and I see what's going on around the world, and I hear the headlines and I see what's happening, I get that same feeling in the pit of my stomach.
The Far Cry games are always well known for extremely memorable antagonists. Can you talk a little about this game's antagonist?
Yeah, so I think that the thing that we really wanted to do with this character was we wanted to make somebody who, when they talk to you, the idea that they were talking about sounded like it was far-fetched and crazy, but that the more that they talked to you, the more rational and more binary it became. And so this is a guy who believes that he's been chosen, that he's there to basically protect people and save people from the collapse. But he's going to do it and protect you whether you want to be protected or not. He's going to go out and he's going to take you. And there's something really interesting about that. And I remember 2 years ago, I was kind of walking downtown and I saw this guy who was wearing this sandwich board, and it said something to the effect of, the end is near. And for the first time I looked at him and I was like, yeah, maybe he's right. And I remember thinking about that thought and thinking about, holy cow, I looked at something that 2-3 years ago I would have looked at and said, that guy's crazy. And now I'm thinking, looking at it, does he know something we don't?
Can you talk a little about some of the other characters that surround the father?
Sure. When you think about what we've done in the past, we've really made it a face-off. We've made you go, person to person, right? And the benefit of being in a first-person camera is that you can have those intimate moments. But this time what we wanted to do was make sure that we actually gave you a family, that we gave you a chorus of characters that you could go after, that they were known in the world, that they had an impact in the world, that they had a lore, and that people were afraid of them, each one for different reasons. And that when you experience them, each of those was like a different flavor.
You also have some allies on your side that you guys are introducing. Can you talk a little about that?
For sure. I think, one of the challenges is also making it so that when you have people in the world that you meet, that you can meet them and you can talk to them and kind of almost win their trust, and then that they can come with you and they could be guns for hire. And that creates a whole new system that we have to look at from the standpoint of, meeting people and talking to them and making them feel like real people that you want following with you and then becoming toys in the world.
Speaking of toys in the world, lots of vehicles. Can you give us an idea of some of the different things? I saw tractors, I saw biplanes.
Yeah, I think if you've been there, if you've been to Montana, if you've been to the sort of the American, that section of the world, you understand that there's a lot of different cool stuff. There's muscle cars, right? There's tractors, and you can turn those things into weapons. There's planes, and I think what's really cool about what we're doing in the world is I like the idea of going and getting something that feels normal and then using it as a bit of a weapon in the anecdote factory and realizing that you're tweaking it. You're seeing how you can take something that you want that muscle car, you want to get in that big rig and cause some damage, you can.
Can you give us a sense of how formidable this enemy is? They're very, very well stocked when it comes to ammo.
Yeah, no, they're formidable. There's the thing that was interesting for us to build a cult was that they're true believers. They really believe this. They believe that they're going to go out in the world, and they believe that when it's all over, if they take you, you'll thank them. And there's something incredibly formidable about that.
Can you talk a little about Montana as a backdrop and what that opened up from an environment and gameplay standpoint?
Well, it was super cool to go to a place where you were able to go and meet people that you kind of already knew, right? People that kind of just made sense. They felt almost like family, but they also felt very real, and you were getting little anecdotes from them, little pieces of information that it was like you were talking to your grandfather and they were telling you something that was like a pearl of wisdom that you keep. I think what's really cool about going to Montana and learning from the people that we actually met there is that we take that and we put it into the voices of the characters in the game, and it makes them feel very real.
What about from game to game, you guys get a lot of knowledge, you push things forward from a technology standpoint. How did past games influence what you're doing now with this latest?
That's a great question. I think, making games, you have to be passionate about it. It's a labor of love. And one of the most heartbreaking things is when you're finishing the game and you got to leave stuff on the cutting room floor. And so that happens. It's going to happen. Like we do that every game. That happens. And what's really nice about this one is we're able to pick up some of those things. We're able to start to put them in this game and see them turn into weapons and feed the anecdote factory. And it's fantastic to see.
When it comes to this franchise, traditionally you got to travel to faraway places, and I'm sure you come home and feel secure. What's the feeling like having filmed this or created this here, knowing that you live here?
What's interesting is that I'll answer that question with something that affected my life. So I went to Montana, and before I went to Montana, I drove a hybrid. And when I came back, I bought an SUV. That's the most honest answer I can give you.